Hello, I'm Chris Well from Build Your Brand Academy, and I teach authors how to leverage publicity so they can build their platform, grow their audience, and get more people to read their books. The folks at Indie Author Fringe have asked me to teach you how to create a stunning author media kit so you can promote yourself and you can promote your book. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little story. I've been in the media for many years. I started writing for newspapers in junior high, started writing for the church newsletter, and by the time I was out of high school, I was freelancing for magazines. So I've been in the media for a long time. Now, some time ago, I was the manager of a media company that had several magazines, and shortly after I got there, one of the magazines ran into a problem. A major feature interview with an author fell through, and they had to push that story to the next issue. And now they had a hole. The problem was that they were too close to publication date to start a new interview from scratch. So I stepped in to help them, and I knew there was a publisher in their niche that had publicity materials on its website. So I went to the website, found an author who was appropriate for this audience, and found that the publisher had in fact included an author photo that was appropriate for the sizes that we needed for publication, and had a pre-prepared interview that they had created for publicity purposes. So I took that Q&A document, copied and pasted it, did some light editing, wrote a new introduction to give it context, and we ran that photo and that story in the magazine. So the author went from not being in that issue at all to being one of the major features in that magazine. Suppose this opportunity came up and they came to your website looking for something to help them promote you and put you in that open slot. Would they have found what they needed, or would they have clicked around, given up, and then moved on to another author who did have what they needed? What I'm about to teach you is how to create the right kinds of materials for your author website so that you will be ready for opportunities from the media. Welcome to How to Create a Stunning Media Kit for Yourself and Your Book. I'm Chris Well from Build Your Brand Academy, and in our time together I'm going to share why every author needs a media kit. I'll talk to you about the essential pieces that belong in your media kit, and then we'll talk about how to present it on your author website so that you can get the most value out of it. In case you don't know me, I've worked in the media for most of my life, and for the past 30 plus years have worked in a number of capacities and a number of kinds of media. I've worked in print media, I've been a broadcaster, I've been a podcaster, I've worked in digital media. I've also been a writer most of my life, and in 2005 published my first novel. Over the next few minutes, my promise is that you're going to learn the basic pieces that belong in your author media kit. Whether you write fiction or nonfiction, it doesn't matter. I'm going to share how these materials help you present yourself in an effective and professional manner, so that as you expand your reach through attention from the media, you'll be leveraging their platform to build your platform. Let me share with you 5 reasons that you need a media kit. A media kit anchors your book promotion. As you hone your messaging for these PR materials, it helps you clarify what you represent. Whether you're pitching yourself as a guest for an interview, submitting a guest post, or creating promotional materials for your own use, your author media kit forms the base for all your marketing. A media kit prepares you for attention. When people come to your site for information about you, you don't want to have to scramble to put together what should have been on your site in the first place. After all, these people are trying to promote you. A media kit articulates why you're special. These materials explain what sets you apart as an author. A media kit helps visitors understand why you deserve the spotlight. A media kit explains you to more than just the media. Yes, you want to create these materials to help you make important connections with influencers in the media. But your online media kit can also help you build bridges with event planners, influential people in your category, booksellers, librarians, and even new readers. A media kit works whether you're there or not. A great benefit of putting media materials on your website is that someone can come to your website and grab them day or night. Whether you're at work or school, maybe you're out of town, if you put a decent set of materials on your website, being out of pocket doesn't mean you're out of luck. Now let's go through some essential pieces for your author media kit. The author bios, suggested interview questions and your author Q&A, a feature article, a document that shares your endorsements and reviews and testimonials, how you present your sample or excerpt, how you share the images. We're also going to talk about a one-sheet. And then at the end, I'll tell you how to assemble your kit. Now, for most of these, all you need is a Word program that will save PDF documents. If you have that, then you're already good to go. A couple of words about contact information. These people need to know how to get in touch with you. Every piece that you're going to make for your kit should include contact information. An important person out there in the world will get one piece of your kit out of context, and all they have to work with is that one document. If it doesn't include a way to contact you, then they can't follow up. Always include your name, website, and a way to contact you. Now, you could include your email address. You could include a phone number. You might include one or more of your social media accounts, but you don't have to include all of them. Only include information that you're comfortable sharing. When you post these documents or when you put this information on your author website, you have to understand that at that point it is out in the world. It is no different than printing out this document, going down to a local store, and then handing that printout to just some random stranger. If you want people to call you, but you don't want to share your home number, set up an alternate phone number. If you want them to be able to contact you through the mail, but you don't want to give them your home address, set up a post office box. If you want people to email you and you don't want to give out your personal email address, set up an alternate email address. Only use accounts that are up to date and that you check regularly. Well, let's say you have a Pinterest account and you have never been there since you set it up. And so the author photo is out of date, the information is a couple of years old, and you never check it for messages. Well, don't include that in your contact information if you never go there. It will give a bad impression, and even worse, if they tried to contact you through that account and you never check it, then you'll never know that they tried to get in touch. Your media materials need to include 3 author biographies. Yes, I said 3. Now, these bios are different lengths because they're used in different places. When the media wants your author bio, they're not looking for your life story. What they want is a brief explanation of who you are as an author, what you write, and then what differentiates you from other authors in your genre or category. Now, although these are 3 different author bios, they can go together in one document. Let's break down what these individual bios are. First of all, you have the short bio. This is one sentence. Your short bio should be the most focused, most dynamic, most targeted description of who you are as an author. If a complete stranger is only going to read one sentence about you, you want it to be this sentence. This one-sentence bio should not include any irrelevant information. Don't tell us where you went to school. Don't talk about your pets or your hobbies unless they are directly related to what you write. This is an example of a one-sentence bio for a novelist. Now notice this is just a few words, but it tells us quite a bit because it's very compact and it gets right to the point. She writes historical fiction, but in a specific time period. She writes romances, but they're funny. We've learned a number of things about her fiction that helps us zero in on exactly what she does in just a few words. And we don't know anything about where she went to school. We don't know about her hobbies. We don't know about pets or children or anything, but we know exactly what we need to know about what she writes. Now here's a made-up example of a nonfiction bio. So once again, it is one sentence. It is just a few words. It does talk about where he went to school, but it is clearly related to what he writes. Your medium bio is about 50 words, or 2 to 3 sentences. A description of this length is about what would work on your book jacket, or maybe some of your social media profiles. This would fit the space you would have. But these 50 words are still focused on relevant details. So again, don't share where you went to college or about your pets unless those details are directly related to your genre or category. Tell us instead, what are your qualifications to write what you write? What draws you to this category or genre? What work experience or life experience brought you to this place where you write this? As with the shorter bio, if you earned a certain degree that's related to your expertise, education, awards, if you were published somewhere, then yes, all those things go up front. So here now is our fiction example again. The Jane Doe bio is still compact, and it's still about what she writes. And notice, the reason she writes this is she was a history buff since she was a kid. So it doesn't have to be that she was a teacher. It doesn't have to be that she's an archaeologist or a researcher. She doesn't have to have a job to give her permission to write this. You can just be a fan of your genre, which is why you write in that genre. It also talks about, she's written about the Old West for several publications. All of these details are still pointing toward the kinds of things that she writes and why we should pay attention to her as a writer in this category. Now here's the medium bio example for our nonfiction writer. There are a few more details than the shorter bio, but the details are all still relevant. Yes, now he's telling us that he's in Nashville, but he's telling us in the context of he is a food truck driver and a freelance writer in that area. It's all still connected to this is who he is as an author, this is what he writes, and this is why he writes it. And our third kind of bio then is the long bio, and this is up to 100 words. At this length, you do have some room now for personal details, but it's still not an essay. You want the relevant information to be packed up front at the beginning of the paragraph. But you can also now share about yourself or your family. So if you really have to tell me that your cat is the reincarnation of Julius Caesar, fine. Just make sure by the time that I get to that point that I already understand what you write and why you write it. Here now is our example from Jane Doe, the romance writer. She doesn't tell us the personal details until we get closer to the end of the paragraph. She still leads with, this is who she is as an author, this is what she writes, and this is why she writes it. And she's telling us details that are completely relevant to the kinds of things that she writes. And that would also, if you're an interviewer, make you want to ask questions about that and say, oh, that's an interesting detail. Oh, you're in this theme park society. Let's talk about that. Now here's our example from our nonfiction author. A lot of the details you saw in the shorter bios, he is now just adding more details. Even at 100 words, most of the things you learned in this paragraph are directly related to the kind of thing that he writes. He waits till he gets to the end to tell us personal details. And so now if you make this document for your media kit, the colors are just for our example here. This is one page. It has a short bio, a medium bio, a long bio. Notice also contact information. You could create a document like this in just a regular Word document, and then you save it as a PDF. These are the 3 bios that I have written for Build Your Brand Academy, so they are on my media page. One thing I want to point out is these are bios that are for one brand, not everything I do. So I lead with the things that are more important. In the medium bio, it comes up in the last sentence that I write mysteries and suspense. In the longer bio, it goes a little more detail, but I don't talk about why I write mysteries because why I write mysteries is not relevant to why I teach at Build Your Brand Academy. Focus on the things that are about why you made this bio, who you're sending it to. The person reading this bio needs to understand this brand so that they can prepare for an interview. They can put this bio in an article about you. You want this to be really focused because if they put that sentence in and it's some random sentence about your pets or about something else that you like or something else that you do, it's not going to encourage people who learn about you to find out more. Now, some key points about author bios. Write them in the third person. These should be about you, not from you. Stack relevant information up front. Make sure that as you start the sentence or start the paragraph, that the first things that the reader is learning is who you are as an author, what you write, and why you write it. Reinforce why you, of all people, write in this genre or category. Tell us any experience or interests that are directly related to the kind of thing that you write. It is completely fine if the reason you write this is you are a fan of the category, but you then tell us that. That is more important than whether or not you went to a school that has nothing to do with your category. Do not write a long, drawn-out letter. You can have a letter to readers on your website if you want, just don't confuse that with your bio. That is a different thing. You also want to avoid time-sensitive information in your bios. Assume that wherever they end up or get posted, they will be there for a while, and that nobody's ever going to update them. Tell us things in such a way that it will still be true 6 months from now. Your author media materials need to include suggested interview questions and also an author Q&A. The suggested interview questions are exactly what it sounds like. These are questions that you are making available to the media if they want to interview you. The interviewer will almost never have read your book. You can't take it personally. It is mathematically impossible for that person to read every book of every person that he or she is going to talk to. So get over it. This person thinks you are interesting enough to interview. That is great. If you create these questions, it leads to a conversation that makes them look smart. It makes you look smart. It also helps you control the conversation so that it hits on the points that you want to make sure they remember to hit. The Q&A document has the questions, and you have written out answers to the questions. The reason you would create the Q&A is that some media, especially newspapers, magazines, websites, in some of those cases, all they need is this Q&A, and they'll just copy, paste it, run it as an article. Or if they just need a quote, they may go through and pick quotes out of it. Maybe they'll use this document to help them research and think of new questions to ask you, so they're preparing for an interview. There are any number of things they might do with this document. To create your suggested interview questions, you want to come up with 10 or 20 questions that would lead to an interesting discussion on your topic. You could just make a Word document and save it as a PDF. Make sure to include your contact information. Here, as an example, are some suggested interview questions that I wrote for our nonfiction example author. If I had wanted to interview him, I could just take this document and we could go live. Me as the interviewer, I might just use these questions. These might spark ideas for me to make up other questions, or just as the conversation gets going, then maybe other questions will come to mind after the conversation is already in motion. But having these suggested interview questions is a great safety net, and it's a great conversation starter. Now, the author Q&A document, you can use the same questions, and then you would just answer them. This also would be a Word document, save it as a PDF. The way that you can make this is you can write out the answers to these questions. You can record these answers to these questions on your computer. If you find that it's hard to sound conversational doing that, maybe you want to trade emails with another author. Maybe you want to get on the phone with another author and have a conversation and record it and transcribe it so that you sound conversational. Here's the example from our nonfiction author. One of the questions that we just saw, this is the answer that he had for that question. As the media, maybe all I need is one quote to put in an article or a profile or something. Or maybe I interviewed this author and this will help me because it's like, oh, I forgot to ask about this. Or this is a detail that did not come up in our actual conversation. There are just a number of reasons that this is a great document for you to create. Here's now an example again from my own media page on my website. And I have interview topics. So these are general topics that an interviewer might ask me about. And then I have specific suggested interview questions. I was a guest at an online summit and he asked for suggested questions. I gave him a list that was very similar to this, and that was our conversation. Key points. Be conversational. These questions should focus on digging deeper into your category or your story or this topic. The Q&A answers should sound conversational and work as standalone quotes that can be cherry-picked. And make sure that your answers are not writerly. Try to sound like yourself, as if you were talking. Focus on the ideas that are in your books, not on the book itself or how you made the book. You want the questions to lead to an interesting conversation on your topic. So they are not about your book. They are not about how you write. They're not about how you publish. They are about your topic of expertise or the interesting ideas that come out of your book. You want to show that you are an authority in your space, that you are a storyteller, you are an expert, You are a teacher. You are a philosopher. Don't include questions that can be asked of any author. Don't include questions about your writing process. Don't focus on your publishing journey. You want the questions and the Q&A document to focus on your art, not your craft. It is possible that in an interview they will ask you these kinds of questions. However, they don't need your help coming up with these kinds of questions. They need your help with asking intelligent questions about your topic. Don't overwhelm them. 10 to 20 questions is fine. You could go with as few as 5 questions, but once you get to about 20 questions, that's a good place to stop. You don't want to give them a catalog of questions. You don't want to give them 6 pages of questions. Just enough questions that fit on a single sheet of paper. They can print out that single sheet and start interviewing you. Your media material should include a feature article. So the feature article is a document that is a fully fleshed out magazine-style article of 400 to 600 words. Compared to your author bios, this is more news-focused, more timely, and it also is more about your book. The media might use this feature article as a resource. They might cherry pick a quote out of this. They might take some ideas out of this for what they would ask you. The media can also run it as is. Now, obviously, we're talking about text media, so newspapers, magazines, websites, but they might run it as an article as is because it should be written so they can. Take your Q&A document and then flesh it out into an article. Paraphrase some of your quotes for transitions. Don't start at the beginning. Take what's going on right now and put it up at the front, and that's where you start the feature article. Start with, this is the reason you're reading this right now, and then you go back to the beginning and you form a circle. A handy way to make this an article that they might want to use is to remember the journalistic practice of the 5 W's. Who, what, where, when, and why. Who is this about? What is going on? Where is it happening? Why is this important? When does it take place? Try to answer as many of those questions as possible in your article. And then you could make it in a regular Word document, bold the headline, italicize the subhead. You want the body copy to be a normal font, normal point size. Make sure you include your contact information. Save that Word document as a PDF. Key points. Write this article in the third person. This is about you. It is not from you. You want this article to read like an article in a magazine or like it would belong in the lifestyle section of the newspaper. Don't be too general about yourself. Don't be too general about your book. Go deeper than I exist. Go deeper than this book exists. Why is it interesting or important that you wrote this book? Or why is this topic going to be interesting to that audience? Your media material should also include a section that highlights endorsements or reviews or testimonials. Here's the thing. When you tell the media how amazing you are, you're just some random stranger bragging about yourself. Think of it this way. If you see somebody over at a table and you interrupt them and say, hey, I'm really great, I think you know that that's not going to go well. You're bothering them and they're like, why are you telling me you're so great? Why should I believe you? I don't know you. But if you have a review or you have an endorsement or you have a testimonial, it gives you more credibility when somebody else says how great you are. So if you are able to share quotes from other people about the quality of your work, quotes about your writing, your teaching, your storytelling, it helps the media to trust you. And they may also use one of these quotes in the article or in the introduction to help their audience trust you too. If you have quotes that you can put in a document like this, you can use a simple Word document, put in the quotes, put in your contact information, save it as a PDF. So these are endorsements that I have received from some of my students. Key points. You want to include relevant details about who this endorser is. We want a name, and we also want relevant professional or demographic information. Whatever it is about this person that helps us understand why we should listen. And then also tell us where this person is from, whether it's a quote from a website or just tell a city and state. So again, it helps us believe it's a real person. And then you also want these quotes to talk about the benefits that you have brought to this person's life. How did your book or your teaching or your service help this person? You want them to be more specific than "I loved it." These quotes should be real people saying real things that they really meant about your product. If you fudge on this, you will be found out. Don't attribute an endorsement to someone who didn't say it. If the media sees that this person said something about you, they may call them up or send them an email and ask about their experience, and then they're going to say, "What are you talking about? I've never heard of this person." Or, "What are you talking about? I hated that book." Don't freak out if you don't have these kinds of quotes yet. If you need some reviews, then send review copies of your book out to people to get reviews. If you need endorsements, if you need testimonials, give them free access to your online school. If you are a consultant or you are a coach, try and get endorsements from people that either you have helped or offer free services to somebody in exchange for getting a testimonial. In your media materials, you may also want to include some kind of sample or excerpt. This gives somebody an opportunity to actually get a taste of what your writing is like. All of the other pieces we've been talking about are you talking about what you do. This is an opportunity for them to actually experience what you write. The way the media might use this document is it may become part of their research. So they read this sample because it helps them have ideas about how to interview you or ideas about how to write about you. But in some cases, the media may decide, hey, we're going to just run this excerpt on our website. In a publication, it might be, this is the coverage that you get, is we're going to run this excerpt, and that's you appearing in that magazine. But if it's, say, you're going to be interviewed for a podcast and they have a website, they may have the excerpt on the website so that listeners can, hey, read a free excerpt at our website. Or in a magazine or a newspaper, they may have an interview or a feature and then run this excerpt as a sidebar to that article. So the way you would create this as a document is you can just a regular Word document. You would put your book cover on the front. You want to make sure it includes the title of the book and your name. You want to maybe put a table of contents, especially in the case of if you're a nonfiction author, and the table of contents tell us things about what your book covers. If you're a fiction author and telling me the table of contents doesn't help me understand your book, then don't worry about it. And then, of course, a sample from the book, something that makes sense out of context. It should be representative of the experience of the book, but it also should be something that I can understand what's going on. In this document, you may also include quotes from reviews about the book. And then, of course, you want contact information so that an interviewer can follow up. If there are website links, here's where you can go to learn more about the book. You can make all this in a regular Word document and save it as a PDF. Key points. It needs to be a representative excerpt that makes sense out of context. Make sure that you use a normal basic font, a normal basic point size so that it is easy to read. Don't annoy them by making it some weird font. Don't call it an excerpt and then make a super tiny point size and jam in your whole book because you're trying to trick them. Because you won't trick them, you'll just annoy them and they'll delete this. You are smarter than that. When you send an excerpt, you're going to send just an excerpt, and it will be a normal point size, normal font. It will be easy to read. Don't include any secret or private information. As with all of these pieces, you have to assume that once you post it online, it can very easily get into the hands of anybody in the general public. Your media material should also include an author photo. In most cases, when the media is asking for a photo, they want you looking at the camera. You're not wearing a weird hat. You're not at a party somewhere. You're not in some kind of odd pose. You're not holding props. They just want a headshot. Now, for branding reasons, your author photo needs to also be your primary picture that you use on your social media profiles as well. Now, you want to have this photo available in your media materials before someone asks for it. If you wait until they ask, then you'll be scrambling to figure it out. And then you'll be rushed and you might risk missing out on a great opportunity. You don't have to hire a photographer to get your basic author photo. I'm not saying don't hire a photographer. What I am saying is that there are very particular things that the media is looking for with your author photo. And these are things that you can do yourself. If you have a smartphone, you have a good enough camera to take your own author photo, if you follow these points. And if somebody else who is a photographer takes your picture, they also need to follow these simple points. First of all, it should be simple. Simple background, simple pose, not you with props, not you with your hands around your face. The background is not distracting. It also needs to be well lit. There needs to be more light in front of you than behind you. If possible, you want to have 3-point lighting. This means that there are lights coming at you from 3 directions, 2 from the front from different angles, and then 1 to separate you from the background. Don't sit in front of a window, or don't have the sun behind you. You also want the photo to be clear. You'd be surprised how many times I went to an author's website to get an author photo, and it was fuzzy or blurry. You want a photo that is clear. Don't just snap the one picture, and if it's blurry, go with it. Keep snapping photos until you get one that is clear. You also want your photo to be framed correctly. There needs to be enough room around your head and shoulders that I, as the media, can crop that photo into the shape that I need. You have to understand that media websites, newspapers, magazines, they have a style. They need them to be a particular shape to fit a particular box. And if you send a photo where, it's a super close-up and you've cropped it too closely to the sides of your face, well, they still have to make that photo the correct shape, which means they may have to cut even further into your face. You don't want that to happen. You want to make their lives easier so that they want to work with you again. And then you also want your photo to be available in both high resolution and low resolution. If it's a print magazine or a newspaper, they're going to need a higher resolution because it has to do with the printing process. And for a digital outlet, it could be they're in high definition. They need a better photo. Some outlets need the bigger picture, but some need the smaller picture. So like a website will want the smaller picture because it is better for their site. It helps with the loading time when somebody comes to that website if the pictures are smaller. The high resolution file is 300 dpi, dots per square inch. The low resolution file is 72 dpi. Think of it as the large photo, and then the low res would be like the thumbnail. And then, so the thumbnail is there if I want the smaller one, but I click on the thumbnail to get the larger one if what I really need is the larger one. And so here's the example from my own media page. This is, you can't see because this is a picture of a picture, but it's a certain size that you might say, oh, this is the size I need. And you notice there's room around me to crop into different shapes. If you need it to be a rectangle or a square or headshot, whatever, you get to choose how to crop it. I did not choose for you. You can open it into another window, and then there's a much larger version of it if you actually needed a high-resolution photo. I also have photos of me speaking, but those aren't my primary author photo. This is the photo that you see on my Twitter account. This is the photo I have on Facebook. This is the photo that I use anywhere that somebody says, hey, send me your author photo. This is what I send because I'm trying to have a consistent brand. Key points about your author photo. You can have supplemental photos of you speaking or at an event or out on location. It's fine to have those. It's fine to offer those, but understand that those are not your primary author photo. You want consistent branding. You want all of your online profiles to use the same author photo. They find you somewhere else online and then they follow it back to your website. You want to make sure they always know they're in the right place. Avoid pictures of you with other people. It is sad how often I've been trying to cover an author and the only author photo that was available was them at a party somewhere, and like the woman was the author and her husband had his arm draped around her because they were at somebody's birthday party. That is not an author photo. That is a photo of a person out at a party. You don't want holiday snapshots. You don't want party pictures. You want a serious picture that is just you being the author. You don't want to have fancy filters. You don't want to have a halo. You don't want to fiddle with the picture because you're trying to be clever. You can do that on your website. Just make sure that the author photo that's in your media materials is just a clear, simple photo that can be used as a headshot. Avoid bad webcam photos. It is possible for you to use the camera that's in your computer or your tablet or your phone, but just make sure that you are the right distance away. You don't want those weird webcam photos where, the light's behind you and so you're like in the darkness and the window behind you is putting a halo around your head and you're at this weird angle so your forehead's giant. You can use your webcam, just don't do a bad webcam photo and think that that's your author photo. Your media materials should also include a clear and simple copy of your book cover. If the media is going to cover you in some way and they ask for a book cover or they come to your website looking for a book cover, they want a standard book cover. Now, you may want to put on your homepage some kind of stylized version of your cover, but you have to understand that the members of the media can't use that. They want just a regular book cover. So the version of your book cover that you use for marketing materials should follow these guidelines. Your primary book cover image needs to be available in a straight-on format. No 3D effects, no curves, don't tilt it. You also want your book cover to be pure and unfiltered. Don't add any effects. No coloring, no halo effect, no filters. It should look like the actual book cover. You also want your book cover to be available in both a large high-resolution file and also a smaller low-resolution file. And so depending on the needs of that media outlet, they may choose one or the other. So think of it as you have a large book cover file, and then the smaller one is the thumbnail. And some media will want the thumbnail, and then some will click on the thumbnail because they want the big version. Key points with your book cover. Remember that the media wants a standard book cover. No fancy filters, no 3D effect. They just want the book cover. You also want your media materials to be up to date. So the cover of your most recent book and also the most recent version of your cover. If they grab it and use it and oops, it's the wrong cover, they're not going to go back and fix it. They don't care. They've already moved on to the next thing. Make sure that your media materials have the most recent cover of your book. And then also make sure that you offer the cover in a large file and also a small file. Depending on the media outlet, their needs are different. They may need the larger file because it's print or because they are high definition. And if they take a small one and they have to blow it up, that will make it pixelated. This is not good. Offer both a high resolution and a low resolution version of your book cover so that the media has whichever kind they need. Your media materials should also include a one sheet. Now, the one sheet, which might also be called a sell sheet, is perhaps the most important piece in your entire media kit. It is essentially a one-page media kit that can be used as a calling card, or you might use it as a promotional flyer. And this will work for nearly any professional conversation that you might have as an author. A one sheet is essential for conversations that you might have with booksellers, libraries, event planners. This document includes so many of the details that they need, presented in an easy-to-skim format. In many ways, the one sheet combines most of the elements that we have discussed up to this point. Now remember, some people are going to be skimming this document. You want to make it easy for them to find what they consider important. If you're promoting a book, you want the book cover to be prominent. List any promotions that you'll be doing for the book. Are you going to be on a blog tour? Are there going to be any public appearances? Are you going to be a guest on podcasts? It can also include any kind of marketing or promotion that you're doing. You also want to include the title of the book in a couple of places. You also want to include your name, your author name. If you use a pen name, you would put that. You would also include these kinds of details. The category. Does your book have an ISBN number? What formats is the book available in? What is the page count for the book? If you don't have a page count because it's just an ebook, then you might put the word count and just round up or down. You also include the price and then the publication date. When was this book published or when is it going to be published? You also might want to include where the book is available from. If you're giving this sheet to somebody at a bookstore or at a library, this is where they would buy your book in bulk. And then, as with all of the other pieces of your media materials, tell me how to get in touch with you. You want to have a quick summary of what the book is about. You also want to include some selling points. These are reasons that this book is interesting, or reasons that this book is timely or particularly relevant. If you have any quotes from reviewers or testimonials, or you have endorsements, you can include a couple of those here. And then you also want to include a section about the author, and you can just drop in one of your author bios right here. And if you have room, it's also nice to drop in your author photo too. I created this demo version of a one sheet in PowerPoint. If you have PowerPoint, if you have a similar kind of program, you can do that. If you are able to do this in your Word program, that's completely fine. All that matters is you can put in this text, you can put the pictures where you want them, you want the columns to work correctly, whatever works. The key is, whatever you create it in, save it as a PDF. Now, some key points about your one sheet. Because so many of these details are duplicated from other pieces of your media kit, the one sheet can actually stand in for nearly any other piece of your kit. So it is a kind of one-page media kit. If you are going to be meeting with people, if you're going to be at a convention, if you're going to have a conversation with your local bookseller or your local library, you could just print this out and take this one sheet, and it has most or all of the information that they would need to know who you are, know what the book is about, and how to get in touch with you for further information. The one sheet will be about a single book, but it can be about any of your books that you want. If you are a fiction author and you have a series and you really want people to start at the beginning of the series, so you are actually promoting the first book to get them into the series, then maybe your one sheet will be the first book. If you are a nonfiction author and your current book is part of a series, but you are really focused on this newest book, then maybe the one sheet is about your newest book. Once you make one, if you're like, oh, it's pretty simple to plug and play, change out the book cover, change out the book description, if you want to make a one sheet for every book you have, there is no reason not to do that. Be sure to focus on why you are special. Don't be vague or general. It's not enough that your book is this category or this genre. Why is it special in this category or genre? You want to make sure that the information you're presenting makes me want to know more about the book, makes me want to know more about you, makes me more intrigued, or feel like this is something I want to share with my audience. Don't be sloppy. They are going to get an impression of you based on this sheet. Make sure that you're using a font that makes sense, that is easy to read. You're using point sizes that make sense. Make sure your columns are lined up, that your book cover is not fuzzy or pixelated, that your author photo is clear and easy to see who you are. Remember that this page represents you, so you want to make a good impression. Now, how to share that information with people who come to your website looking for it. What happens is I, as the media, come to your website and you are presenting these materials on a media page on your website. The materials are right there on the page, or there are links so I can download these pieces, or there's a zip file that I can download as a single folder, all of the media kit materials. It could be I'm considering you, and so these materials will help me decide whether you're a good fit for my audience. I might be researching you because I plan to interview you or feature you in some way, and so these materials help me research to prepare for that article, to prepare for that interview. And of course, some of these materials are there for me to just take and use, or remix, or repurpose, or maybe just even run as is. There are different ways that you can present it. First of all, you could just have an online media kit, which is just a dedicated page for these materials. There's a navigation button on your home page, and then you are hosting the content right on the page. So if you were to go to Build Your Brand Academy, which is my website, there's a media page. The text is actually on the page for you to copy and paste as you need. If you went to the page, you would see, my 3 author bios, their interview topics. There are suggested interview questions. As you scroll down, we're not talking about this now, but as you scroll down, I am also using this page to document my appearances in the media. You may also want to create these pieces as downloadable files. What would happen is I, as the media, come to your site, and then there's a link for me to, say, download the feature article or download your author bios. So for downloadable files, you want to make sure all the Word documents are saved as PDFs. Now, the reason that this is important is that if you were to give me the original Word file or the original PowerPoint file or whatever, it may not translate correctly for me because you and I have probably different computers, we're using different operating systems. But if you save as a PDF, that is a universal format that what it looks like to you, it's very likely it will look exactly the same to me. And then, of course, your images you want to save as a standard image format like a JPEG or a PNG. Upload these PDFs and image files either to your website or, as we're going to talk about in a minute, there are other places you can host it. On your site, there would be links then to these materials. And then the images should appear as thumbnails. So I see your author photo, I see your book cover, and it says, click here for a high-resolution file. If you want to offer a downloadable media kit, put all of these PDF files and the image files in a folder, and then you give the folder a title that makes sense. Maybe your name and then media kit, and then you want to use underscores. Don't have any spaces in the name of the folder. And then you compress the folder into a zip file, so it would look like this zip file in our picture. Then you want to host the zip file somewhere. Then what would happen is, in this case, I as the media, I come to your website, it says download press kit. There's a link, I click the link, I'm downloading this zip file, then I open the file and all the materials are in this folder. These files should be small enough that you can probably just host them on your own website. But if for some reason you can't or don't want to do that, what you can do is have them hosted somewhere else. You might use some kind of cloud storage service like Google Drive or Dropbox. And then what happens is when the media comes to your media page and it says click this link, what's happened is I'm clicking the link on your page and it is downloading the file from Google Drive or from Dropbox. You are hosting the link on your site, but you don't have to host the files on your site if you don't want to. And in fact, you could do all of these options. You could put all of these materials, just text on the page, and then click here if you want to download these individual pieces. Click here if you want to download the whole kit. I've also seen examples where some authors will present all of these pieces as a single PDF download. And it's like a 8 or 10 page PDF that has all of these different pieces. So that's an option too. Now, sometimes one of my students will ask about whether they want to have a print version of their media kit. The fact is, in today's day and age, that's rarely necessary. If you do need a print version of your media kit, maybe you're going to be meeting with somebody. Maybe you're going to be at a conference and you're thinking it would be a good idea to just have the whole kit available in person. Well, what you would do is you print these pieces out on nice paper. You want to use a solid colored folder. And then you want to print out some kind of label for the front of the folder. In my experience in the media, we get so much content from so many people. If a folder isn't labeled in some way, it's very easy to lose track of it. So you want the folder to actually say who it's from, but you want it to look nice. So don't just scribble on it with the marker. Put some kind of label on it. Key points. It's good to have these materials before they need them so that when somebody from the media or a bookseller or a librarian has questions, there are documents that are already available ahead of time to make them easy to find, easy to download, easy to use. You don't have to scramble to come up with things. The media kit is a tool for publicity. This is not the publicity itself. Putting this media kit on your website is not the thing that will automatically make people know that you exist. You're still going to have to reach out, raise your hand, send an email. Don't broadcast your media kit. You don't just send out a mass email and you attach your media kit and you're suddenly sending this information to people who have no context. That's not what the media kit is for. The media kit is to back up your pitch or to give additional information to somebody that's already looking for that information. You don't send the media kit to somebody cold. You also want it to be easy for them to find. You want to have a navigation button on your website. So if somebody comes to your website looking for media materials, it is easy to find them. You also don't put these media materials on a password protected page. This has happened more times than should ever have happened, that I was going to cover somebody and I go to their website to get materials and then they're asking me to set up some kind of account. I don't have time for that as the media. I can find somebody else who has materials for me to use and I'll just move on. These materials are to help me make you more famous. Make that job easier for me. Well, there you have it. That's how you create a stunning author media kit to promote yourself and to promote your book. I want to thank the folks at Indie Author Fringe for hosting me, and I want to thank you for your time, and I hope I've given you some practical information. We have a gift for you. I have a free set of media kit templates to help you get started. If you have any questions, look me up online at buildyourbrandacademy.com. I'm also on Twitter at buildyourbranda. So until we cross paths again, this is Chris Wells saying good luck and keep writing.